In this video, we're going to use Power Pivot in order to learn how to combine files. This file that we're working with, Workbook for Tableau, Power Pivot, XLOOKUP, I'm going to use the same file also with Tableau and also with XLOOKUP to show you how to work with a relational database. This workbook is an example of a relational database. In the Orders tab, I have all sorts of order IDs and order dates, but I only have school codes, products code, units sold, and salesperson code is all the information that I have. And in fact, if you scroll down, you're going to see that there are actually quite a number of orders. This goes down to row 2156. Now, in order to make sense of this, if we go to the institutions table, we have the school code, we have the school name, we have the state, and we also have the region. If we go to the sales people tab, we have salesperson code, the salesperson name, and their commission rate. And finally, on the products tab, we have the product code, we have the book name, we have the cost per book, and we have the price per book. So if you bring yourself back to the days before computers, when we would have to do this by hand, you might get this in 4 separate printed out pieces of paper. And if your boss said to you, I can't handle this school code, I need the school name, what you would do manually is you would look up 102, you'd go to the institutions, you'd say 102 is Athens State, you'd go back to the orders piece of paper, you would type in Athens State, and we could copy that down, and then we go to the next school code, 103, look up 103 is Concordia College, so we would type that one in, and so on and so forth. That would take a very, very long time with 2,156 rows. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to have Power Pivot relate the tables. So we're going to tell Excel that this school code on the Orders tab or the Orders worksheet is the same as the school code on the Institutions worksheet. We're going to tell Excel that the product code in column D in the Orders worksheet is the same as the product code in column A on the Products worksheet. And finally, the salesperson code, we're going to relate to the salespeople table. Once we do that, we can use Power Pivot in order to combine the tables. Now, if you have a Mac, all you can do is watch this because Power Pivot is not available for Macs, although I do believe that you can run your Mac as a PC and you could install the software and run it that way. That is why I'm going to do a video on VLOOKUP and XLOOKUP and also Tableau, so those of you with Macs can solve the problem using a different method. But for those of you with PCs, Power Pivot would be the easiest way to solve this problem. Now, if you do not see this Power Pivot tab, what I want you to do is I want you to go to File, and then all the way at the bottom, click Options. On a laptop, you may have to click More, and then you'll see Options. On the left-hand side, click Add-ins. Where it says Manage Excel Add-ins, click the down arrow and go to your COM add-ins, and then click Go. And then just make sure that Power Pivot is checked. And I would check all of them. There's no reason not to. But make sure that the Power Pivot is checked, and then click OK. And then you should see the Power Pivot tab. So what we're going to do in Power Pivot, it is going to be a 3-step process. The first step in the process is we're going to add each table to the data model. Then we're going to create the relationships. Then once we create the relationships, we can join the tables together and I will also show you how to do calculations within the table so we can calculate revenue and cost and profit and also total commission. So let's get going. The first step is I'm going to be on the Orders tab. It really doesn't matter which order that we do it in. It will matter with Tableau, but it's not going to matter with Excel. So I'm going to click any cell within the list. As long as I'm not outside the list, we're okay. Any cell within the list, it doesn't matter if it's a date or a product code or a salesperson code. I'm going to click Power Pivot and then just click Add to Data Model. So it takes a moment to come up. It selects the table. It is absolutely vitally important that you click My Table Has Headers. You shouldn't use a table without headers with Power Pivot anyway, because then the titles would be 10248 and 1319 and 102 and 5035, so you would not know what you're working with. You'll understand when we go into Power Pivot. So I'm making sure that My Table Has Headers is checked. I'm going to click OK. And we're actually not going to need this Power Pivot window until we add the fourth table. So we can just close the Power Pivot window right now and then move on and repeat the process for institutions, salespeople, and products. So now I'm going to click the Institutions tab. Click any cell within the list, as long as it's not a blank cell that's outside of the list, but any cell within the list. We do not have to select the list. In fact, it's a bad idea. I'm going to click Power Pivot, Add to Data Model, making absolutely sure My Table Has Headers is checked, and click OK. Once again, I'm going to close this Power Pivot window because I don't need it yet. We'll keep it open after the fourth table is added. So I'm going to close my Power Pivot window, click the Salespeople tab. This is a much smaller table. Once again, any cell that has data, Power Pivot, Add to Data Model, My Table Has Headers, and click OK, and close the Power Pivot window. Now we're about to add the fourth table, so we're not going to close the Power Pivot window, but if you do, it's pretty easy to get back there. So now I'm going to click the Products tab, click any cell within the list, Power Pivot. By the way, now that we're on the Power Pivot tab, anytime that you want that Power Pivot window to open up, all you have to do is click Manage the Data Model. But for right now, we're going to click any cell within the list, Add to Data Model, My Table Has Headers, and click OK. Now, we're actually going to use this Power Pivot window, but again, if you closed it accidentally, all you have to do is go to Power Pivot and click Manage the Data Model, and it comes right up. The next step in the process, after we've added all of the tables to the data model, is to create the relationship so Excel knows that the tables are related. The easiest way to do that is through Diagram View. So I'm now going to click Diagram View, and we can see all of our tables. You can actually resize them so you can see all of the fields, and you can even kind of move them around if you want to, although I don't really think that's necessary. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create the relationship between Table 1 and Table 2, and that relationship is school code. I made sure in this example that the names were exactly the same to make it a little bit easier. So in Table 1, I'm going to single click where it says school code, make sure it's green. Then I'm going to hold down my left mouse button and drag it over to Table 2 and hover over the same field, school code. Once both of them appear green, I just let go, and now we've created the relationship. If you'd like to edit the relationship, all you have to do is double click the arrow between the two, and you can see how the relationship relates to each other and edit it. Now we're going to do the same thing for Table 1 and Table 3. and that's going to relate by salesperson code. So in table 1, I'm going to single-click salesperson code, drag it to table 3, hover over salesperson code, make sure both of them are green, and then just let go to create the relationship. The last relationship that I need to create is between table 1 and table 4, which is going to be product code and product code. So in table 1, I'm going to single-click product code, hold down my left mouse button, drag it out to table 4, make sure that both product codes are green. Once product code and product code are both green, I just let go, and now we have created our relationships. At this point, all of the tables are related, and we're ready to create our tables. So, the first thing that I would like to do is I would like to take a look at the top 5 salespeople by revenue. So let's create a pivot table and let's try to find our top 5 salespeople by revenue. So I'm going to click Pivot Table from the Power Pivot window. Remember, if you close the Power Pivot window, you can always click Manage the Data Model. And you want to click Pivot Table from Power Pivot, not from the regular Pivot Table window. So I'm going to click the Pivot Table. I always like my pivot tables on a new worksheet. I do not like them on an existing worksheet. And I'm going to click OK. To calculate revenue by salespeople, first on the right-hand side, we can see all the tables in the pivot table fields. I'm going to click the down arrows next to each table name so I could see all of the pivot table fields. Now what I'm going to do is from table 3, I'm going to drag salesperson into the row area. Then after that, from table 4, I'm going to drag book name also into the row area. From table 1, I'm going to drag units sold into the sigma values area. And from table 4, I'm going to drag price per book into the sigma values area. Now it's asking that relationships may need to be created. We've already created the relationship, so you can just close that box. It will come up again, but we have already created the relationships. Now notice before we begin, we have in the sigma values area sum of price per book. That is going to be a problem when we aggregate this, so when we do it by salesperson. So instead of using sum of price per book, I would like to use average of price per book. So in order to do that, I'm going to click the down arrow. I'm going to click Value Field Settings for sum of price per book. And where it says Summarize Value Field By instead of Sum, I'm going to single click Average and then click OK. Now we're going to create a new measure. So from the Power Pivot tab, we're going to click Measures and then New Measure. And we will call this measure Revenue. We can park the new measure in any table that we want. So we can put it in table 1, 2, 3, or 4. I think table 4 makes the most sense because that's where the cost and the price information is, and you can put a description. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click in the box next to the equal sign. The equal sign is required, do not backspace. And to bring up the field names that I want in the calculation, notice too you can use functions as well. But right next to the equal sign, I'm going to type the open bracket, which is the key on your keyboard just to the right of the letter P. Don't hold down the shift for the fancy bracket. We just need the plain bracket, one key to the right of the letter P. And when we open this up, we can see all of the fields that we can use in our calculation. So first, I'm going to double-click sum of units sold to insert the field in the calculation. Then I'm going to type an asterisk to multiply. Then I'm going to type the open bracket again the key just to the right of the letter P. And now we're going to multiply that by average of price per book. So I'm going to multiply that together. If you want, you can check the formula. I'm going to click OK. And now notice that we've been able to calculate our revenue for all of the different books. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to collapse. So for Angie Meany, I'm going to click the minus sign to the left of her name, the collapse box, and now I can see the total units sold and the total revenue for Angie Meany, Benjamin Hernandez, Bill James, Brenda Sullivan, Dennis Morris, Howard Karp, Maureen Millay, Nancy Rogers, Pamela Michaels, Susan Clark, and we can select the table, click Home, comma style, reduce the decimal places, and now we can see the revenue for each one of our salespeople. To display our top 5 salespeople, within the pivot table, I'm going to click the down arrow next to row labels. I'm going to choose value filters, hover over value filters, and then click top 10. Now, instead of showing the top 10, I can click the down arrow and show the top 5 by. Notice I can choose any field that is in the pivot table, and in this time I'm going to choose revenue, and I'm going to click OK, and there are my top 5 revenue producing salespeople. To create a pivot chart from the data, I click any cell within the pivot table. I'm going to click the Pivot Table Analyze tab. I'm going to click Pivot Chart. I think a clustered column makes the most sense, but there are many different types of charts that we can do. I'm going to choose the clustered column, and I'm going to click OK. I'm going to make the chart a little bit larger so we can see it. And down on the right where it says Pivot Chart Fields, what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove sum of units sold, and I'm going to remove average price per book. So now we have a pivot chart that is just our revenue. The next pivot chart that we're going to create is a pie chart of profit by region. So I'm going to click away from this sheet. I'm going to go to any of the other tabs. I'll just randomly go to the Orders tab. Click any cell within the Orders tab. I'm going to click Power Pivot. I'm going to click Manage the Data Model. And from this window, I'm going to click Pivot Table. As you know, I like to put my pivot tables on a new worksheet. So I'm going to click OK. And once again, in the Pivot Table fields, I'm just going to click the arrow next to each of the tables so I can see all of my Pivot Table fields. Now, from Table 2, I'm going to drag Region into the row area. Under Region, I'm going to drag Book Name also into that row area. From Table 1, I'm going to drag Units Sold into the Sigma Values area. I'm going to drag Price per book and Cost per book, both into the Sigma Values area. And since I want profit from Table 4, I'm also going to drag my revenue field into the sigma values area. So just like I did before, when I summarize, I don't want the price per book to aggregate. So in the sigma values area, where it says sum of price per book, I'm going to click the down arrow. I'm going to click Value Field Settings, and under Summarize Value Field By, instead of Sum, I'm going to click Average and click OK, because it's okay to add the units sold, but it is not okay to add the price per book. Then I'm going to do the same of Sum of Cost per book. I'm going to click the down arrow, go to Value Field Settings, and single-click Average instead of Sum, and click OK. Now I'm going to create two new measures. I'm going to create cost, which is going to be the units sold multiplied by the average of the cost per book, and then I'm going to create a profit field, which is going to be our revenue minus our cost. So making sure that I'm on the Power Pivot window, and making sure that one of my active cells is the pivot table, Power Pivot, Measures, and New Measure. I would like to park it in Table 4, but again, you can park the measure in any table that you want. I'm going to call this measure Cost. I'm going to click next to the equal sign in the box, and remember, type the key just to the right of the letter P on your keyboard, the open bracket, and now we can see all of our fields. So I'm going to double-click Sum of Units Sold, type an asterisk, type the open bracket to see the fields that are available, and this time we will multiply it by average of cost per book. So I'll calculate the total cost for each one of the books, and we'll click OK. That field has now been added. Now one more time, making sure that I'm on the Power Pivot window, Measures, New Measure. This one I will call Profit. And what I'm going to do is go down into the area, the blank area, click next to the equal sign, type my open bracket, and I will double click where it says revenue, type a minus sign this time, open my plain bracket, and double click cost, and we're now OK, so I'm going to click OK, and we now have our revenue, cost, and profit available. So what I'm going to do is the same thing that I did before. I'm going to close up all of the categories. So I'm going to click the box next to Mid-Atlantic to close up that detail. So we get a Mid-Atlantic summary. Click the box for the Northeast, the Northwest, the Southeast, and the Southwest. We have all of our different fields right now. Now that I've done all of the calculations, I can remove the fields that I don't want. So I can now remove Sum of Units Sold. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the Sigma Values area. I'm going to click the down arrow, and I'm going to click Remove Field. Notice how the profit doesn't change now that we've removed it because we've created the calculation. I'm going to remove the average price per book. So click the down arrow and just remove field. Click the down arrow, average cost per book. Remove field. Remove revenue. And remove cost. Now that I have my region and my profit, I'm going to click Pivot Table Analyze, Pivot Chart, and this time I'm going to choose a pie chart. And I'm going to click OK. And I'm not going to take the time, but we can add chart labels and a title and make this look better. But now we know our total profit by region. The nice thing is that now that we have defined all of those fields for revenue, cost, and profit, we can now use them in future pivot tables. The next pivot table that we're going to do is a map chart of states by revenue. So I'm going to click any one of the tables. This one, salespeople, randomly. Click any cell within the table. Click Power Pivot. Manage the data model. And click the Pivot Table button right in the middle of the toolbar. I'm going to go to a new worksheet and click OK. And now this one, I'm going to open up all of my tables so I can see all of my fields. This time, from table 2, I'm going to drag state into the row area. And I am going to drag revenue into the sigma values area. So notice now that we've defined the fields, Excel has been able to calculate the revenue for all of the different states. Before I create my pivot table, I'd like the revenue with commas, so I'm going to select my pivot table, click the Home tab, click the comma style icon, and round it to 0 decimals. I'm going to click any cell within the pivot table in order to bring back my pivot table fields. Now, to create our map chart, we're going to need to copy our data outside of the pivot table. So I'm going to select the cells in the pivot table. I'm going to select Alabama all the way down to Washington, D.C. and the revenue. I'm going to hover over. I'm going to right-click and choose Copy. I'm going to click a random cell, cell G1, and then just click the paste icon. The pound signs just means that the numbers are too large for the cell. I'm going to double click to see all of the data in the cells. I'm going to select the range G1 down to H21. I'm going to click Insert. In the Charts group, I'm going to click Maps and then Build Map. And notice right now I have a map chart, and when I hover over a state that has data, you can now see the revenue from that state. The states that have the highest revenue are colored the darkest, and the states that have the lowest revenue are colored the lightest. For the final pivot chart, we're going to create a column chart of the top 10 products by profit, so our top 10 most profitable products. So I'm going to click back to the Orders tab, click any cell within the list. I'm going to go to the Power Pivot window, manage the data model, and then click Pivot Table. I'm going to choose a new worksheet and click OK, accept the default. And I'm going to open up all of the tables so I can see all of my field names. From table 4, I'm going to drag book name into the row area. I'm going to drag profit into the sigma values area. Where it says row labels in the pivot table, I'm going to click the down arrow, value filters, and top 10. Notice I don't have to choose the top 10. I could choose the top 7 or the top 14, whatever I want. And I'm also not limited to profit, even though profit is in this pivot table. I can choose the top 10 by sum of units sold or by revenue, but we're going to choose our top 10 most profitable products. So I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click Pivot Table Analyze. pivot chart, and I'm going to choose the clustered column, which seems to fit. And I now have a nice column chart of my top 10 most profitable products.